Hey everybody, happy Monday and welcome to the weekly community Q&A. As always, I'm going to answer questions that I got either DMs or in the community or through coaching calls. So we'll go through the questions as usual. So we'll jump right in. So first question is around the offer. So it's a question that says, I want to position myself for a product manager job. While I've done a lot of work on it, strategy advising, etc. I haven't formally held the title. What can I do about my resume? And this is in the class of the broader, every time I want to shift from what I do today to something slightly different, experience is all A, I want to do B, what do I do? And, basically the answer is focus on the things that you've done and highlight those that are related to the thing you want to do, right? Because again, the resume is a marketing flyer. It is not a biography. It is not a history of what you're doing, right? So that's what most people think of. Oh, this is everything I've done. That is not what a resume is at all. A resume is a response marketing flyer to an opening out there. So an opening says, hey, I have a problem, right? It's always about the problem. It's not about you. It's about them. It's about the problem. I have a problem. I need someone who can do this. Your resume should be your marketing flyer that says, I can do this, right? And it's just a very fundamental idea that, again, the resume is not a history of what you've done. It is a marketing flyer for your ability to solve the problem that you were trying to solve, which is why customize your resume, having multiple resumes, that's all very important stuff because there's only one question. Can you solve my problem, right? If I'm the hiring manager, can you solve my problem? And so what you want to do is basically create, in this case, a product management resume, right? And as I always say in these cases, right, this is storytelling. So they need to be based in fact and built from there. So if your job title was not product manager, and this is where, how fine a grain are the titles. So typically corporate titles such as vice president, director, manager, those are fixed and you can't call yourself vice president if you weren't a vice president, right? But the second half of it, the name of the function, the name of the thing is very open to style, we'll say. And you can basically call yourself anything you want as long as it represents what you did, right? So if you weren't a product manager, so a product manager basically means you manage a product. But if you didn't manage a product and you did more advisory work or product strategy, you could do product strategy advisory manager or something like that. Like add the word product wherever you can and talk about the pieces of the puzzle that you did. I did product design, did product roadmaps, I did product strategy, I did product operations, I did this. So you basically want to pepper product everywhere in your resume, right? And you don't want to call yourself product manager if that wasn't it, but you can get very, very close if a lot of the work you did was on product improvement. And you want to say, what's a product manager job? What are the things that they're trying to do? Which of those can I hit? And again, if you did product design, that's part of a product manager job. So put, product design that enabled blah, blah, blah revenue, all that kind of stuff, right? And so the idea is, again, fundamentally, it's a marketing flyer to get the job that you want. You want to make as close as possible to the requirements, highlighting the things that you have done. The question is, can you do that function? If you believe you can, then I say prove it. How would you prove it? What have you done? Well, that's what your bullets are. Your bullets are the proof that you can do the thing that comes out in the job description, right? So again, pretty much filter out anything that's not related to product management, highlight everything that is, and make sure that you have that flavor in your resume. The second is get a network referral, right? Somebody who knows you, knows how good you are, knows what you can do. That's the other way to kind of bypass the resume filter. So the resume filter says, did you do these 15 things? You want to have a resume, it's very close. But if you want to bypass the resume filter, a phone call can often do it. If you have the right person make the right call, somebody will talk to you, at which point the resume is not that important. Right? So that's what you want to do if you want to kind of switch functions. All right, second one. Ali, so should I send a follow-up after an executive interview? Is it sort of different than classic? And my 2 cents on this one is, excuse me, yes, you should send a follow-up, but it is a different kind of follow-up. So, you know, you don't have to, but in general, yes, but it's different. When you're more junior, right, oftentimes the follow-up note is, thank you for your time. I really appreciate you having the conversation with me about this amazing role. I think I'd be a great help. Here's my skills. Like, please hire me, right? That's not exactly what you say, but that's the kind of tone of, I really appreciate you taking the time, blah, 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 right? That's the classic way. In the executive version, right, we don't really want to do that because it does come across as a little subservient. It's one thing, again, if you're hiring a new analyst and you're, a manager, whatever, there's a big delta and they can be very polite. It's very normal. as an executive, again, the goal is to have this peer relationship, right? And so you do want to send a follow-up note. You don't want to send a thank you note, right? So the thank you note is, I appreciate your time. A follow-up note is, I really enjoyed our conversation. And then I was thinking more about how we talked about the challenge that you're having related to this. I had a few thoughts about what might be, good next steps or some ideas that you may want to pursue based on our conversation. Thought I would share them. Here they are. Boom, boom, boom. You know, would love to talk more about it. Great meeting you, and hope to hear from you soon. Right. But I'm trying to add value. I'm trying to have a partnership conversation that says, based on what we talked about, I have some ideas. I want to continue the value conversation in my follow-up note and hopefully develop a relationship and then convince you that I'm the right person. Right. So again, it isn't a thank you note. It is a follow-up note to try to have a high value conversation continue after the interview. So that's what I would suggest in terms of, should you do it? Yes, because the goal is it's relationship building and demonstrating value. So do it, but make sure it doesn't come across as thank you for your time. I mean, you can say thank you for your time, but it's better to say, hey, Sue, I really enjoyed our conversation last Tuesday. I was particularly impressed with your company's ability to do this. I thought a little bit about our conversation related to topic X. Here's some ideas. If they're helpful, just wanted to share. All the best, Drew. Right? Something like that. So that's the idea for follow-up notes. Okay. Scroll down here. Okay, next one. Okay, sales. Like, I'm interviewing with a company that I think they might offer, but the job's too junior. How do I keep the relationship alive and not disappoint them? Right. So you got called from a recruiter. Uh, it's an interesting job, but probably a little junior for you, and it doesn't sound like they can up it. How do you not ruin that relationship? So what I would say to this one is, there are really two things you can do, right? So the first is to be clear. I really like your company, I really like strategy, I really like everything about this opportunity. But for me right now, I'm looking for a bigger challenge. And it sounds like this role is smaller. So you want to be clear that this role is not for you, right? So politely, not the, oh, can you up this? No, you can add more value. You think you have more value to offer. This role seems limited in scope and limited in impact. It seems you want somebody to do X. I want to do X plus, right? So again, you're focused on, I think I can make more impact than this role would allow me to make. So I don't think it's right for me, as opposed to it's too junior, it's not enough money. Yes, all those things are probably true, but the way you say it is you don't think it's a big enough role to make the impact that you could make for this company, right? So you want to kind of sell yourself a little bit there, but you want to make it clear that you can't or you're not going to take that role. And then if it's true, like, one is they might try to up it. This happens all the time. Like, if they believe your story and they're like, wow, this guy could really add value, they may very well try to up it. That's the best case scenario. It becomes something you're interested in, continue. But let's say they can't. They're like, okay, we're not at that stage yet. We're just growing. We're starting this function. We're not ready to have, we want a director. We're not ready to have VP. So what do you do in that scenario? So there's two things that you can do. Not necessarily easy, but here are the two best ideas. One is, how should they hire for that role? Right? Give them advice, give them a person if you got it. That's the best, right? It's like, okay, I think I'm a little too senior for this role, but I know somebody would be amazing in this role. Give them, solve their problem, right? Or tell them how to solve the problem. And that, what I mean by that is, give them advice on how to recruit for this role. So it sounds like, okay, so it's a manager role. I'm a director. It's probably not right for me. But I will tell you, as you look for your manager, here's a couple things you want to keep in mind that often people forget, right? Having been in that role, having hired for that role, here's some nuggets that I'm going to give you that it's really important to make sure that they have this kind of background, or that they've sort of gone through this kind of scenario, right? So that's one. Give them advice on how to hire, make their job easier. And number two is, tell them the indicators on when they need this, right? And so again, we're hiring for a director. You want a VP role. They're not ready to VP. They're not scaled. Okay, how do you know whether you're ready for a VP role? You give them some suggestions. Okay, that's great. Understand. Here's my thoughts. Like, if you're hiring for this director role right now, here's a couple things I typically look for. Just if it's helpful. And then honestly, as you keep growing, because it's a good company, it's growing, here's what you want to look for. When you start to have the scaling issues, you're going to see some client tickets, pick up. You're going to see sort of response times go down. You're going to see this kind of thing. That's really the inflection point. And that's really where, at least in my experience, I've seen that, broadening the scope, adding a sort of more senior executive like a VP would be the right thing. So when you guys get there, keep me in mind and give me a call, right? You want to kind of give them the trigger point for when to call you, right? So again, if it's not the right scope, option one, try to up level it, tell them that you can add more value, see if there's any wiggle room there. If there is no wiggle room there, help them with recruiting, and then give them the trigger on when to call you again. Right. So that would be what I would do if it's not the right job, because you always want to build relationships. You want to build, if you remember from I think last week's, right, we talked about collecting company contacts, and you're just building your portfolio of contacts. So even if it's not quite the right job for you, it's good to kind of build that while you're in there. Okay. Next question is on results. So I just landed a new role. Congrats. Awesome. I always love that. How do I impress them in the first 90 days? And so there's obviously a section in the community. You can go look at the classic 90-day plan. You want to do your wins, learn the company, and engage executives, build relationships. But the thing that I would say you can do even faster is partner with other executives, right? Partner with other leaders in the company. And so what I mean by that is how quickly can you get to we have this new idea, we fix this problem, as opposed to you coming in and going clean, clean, clean. I did this, I did this, I did this. That's the classic 90 days. I met everybody. I have a new strategy. Here's what we're going to do. That's classic. It's very effective. Absolutely works. The sort of next level from that is, can you get a partnership early in the first 90 days? Right? Can you actually recruit somebody to help co-sponsor an initiative, work with somebody outside of your function? Right? So that's the slightly more advanced version of, if you want the basics, just go to the community, you got them there. The advanced version is do some of the we partnership stuff in the first 90 days. It's a lot harder to do because you don't have those relationships yet, but if you go in that mindset, it is absolutely doable. And having those partnership successes within the first 90 days is very, very unusual. So if you can do that, it will, definitely show that you are a executive that people are going to want to work with. Okay. So yeah, try that. And then last question here. Let's see. I'm trying to delegate more, but I haven't been super successful. This is in the results category. As a team isn't able to get it done, what am I missing? And so this is where, again, the classic model that I like to use is skill versus will, right? And just to explain the model very simply is, if a task isn't getting done, there's only two reasons why it can not get done. The first is a skill issue. Don't know how to do it. Can't do it, even if I wanted to, right? The second one is a will issue. I could do it, but I'm not. And will implies that it's you don't want to do it. There can be priority issues. It can be other things that are more important, but it is a conscious decision of I can do it, but it is not getting done. So that's your first filter, is which is the problem, right? And oftentimes it's skill. If it's skill, that's training. If it's will, then you need to say, okay, what would it take to get this done? And sometimes it is literally like they're just not interested. It's a very boring task. I don't feel like doing it. And that's a motivation issue. Or two, it could be, yeah, I know, but it's just that we got this other stuff. I'm getting yelled at by this person. Like there's all this other pressure that I'm not doing it. And that's where your job, again, is to kind of figure out which of these things it is and help them resolve it. If it's other people, if it's other priorities, how can you clear the plate, right? How can you make sure that you get help there? If they're motivated, not motivated, well, that's a whole other conversation on how do you get them motivated. Maybe it's not the right thing for them. There's a lot of stuff to do there. But again, for the purposes of the Q&A, the simple thing is start with, do they know how to do it? Because if they don't know how to do it, it doesn't matter how much excitement and everything else you do, they're not going to be able to do it because they don't have the skill. So that's always where you start, is do they have the basic capacity, the skill, the tools, the environment? Do they have access? Do they have all the things that they need to get it done? That's always a place to start, because if they don't have that, it doesn't matter. If they do all of that, then you move over to the will side and say, why is this not getting done? It's not about the execution ability. It is about something else. And you go figure that. So if you're delegating, it's not working, um, you figure out skill or will, and then you can dive in for there. I mean, there's a lot more to talk about in this case, but if you have more questions, let me know. We'll do it in a future week. There you go. So those are the questions for this week. As always, if you have any, just send me a DM, or bring it up in a call, and I will do another one of these next week. Hope everybody has a great week, and we will see you in the community. Take care, everybody. We'll see you.